Welcome to WitchLit, a place to talk about the craft of writing and writing the craft. I'm your host, Victoria Raschke, author, publisher, witch, and nosy Scorpio. You're here, so you're probably an avid reader of books on witchcraft and the occult. And if you're looking for an online source for alternative books and indie decks, LaPantheraStudio.com has an amazing selection of books, tarot decks, and oracle cards to choose from. No matter your path, whether you're into fairy magic or sigil work, find the right books for your library. That's LaPanthera Studio.com. WitchLit listeners can enjoy 15% off their purchases with the code WitchLit. That's WITCHLIT, all one word. Link in the show notes. WitchLit is also brought to you by 1000 Volt Press, an independent, family-owned, digital and print-on-demand publisher of books we want to see in the world. If you'd like to support WitchLit and 1000 Volt Press, the best way to do that is buy our books. Our most recent title is Pagan Roots, Reclaiming Concepts of the Sacred by Yvonne Aburrow. Other titles include A Death in the Dry River by Lisa Allen Agostini, Conjuring the Commonplace by Lane Fuller and Corey Thomas Hutchison, and my most recent novel, Verona Green, A Story of Art and Magic. Head over to 1000voltpress.com/store or order them wherever you buy books. You can also support the show by buying us a cup of coffee at ko-fi.com/witchlitpodcast. All those links can be found in the show notes. Listening, subscribing, and leaving a rating or review also supports the podcast, and we really appreciate it, so thank you. Next month, I'll be joined by Leah Middleton, the redheaded witch, and author of Magic from the Hilltops and Hollers. We haven't settled on a book yet, but if you follow WitchLit on Blue Sky at WitchLitPod, or if you follow me on Mastodon, search for Victoria Raschke, I'll post as soon as we hammer down a title so you can read the selection ahead of time if you like. Welcome to WitchLit. Today, we're going to talk about Cardinal Sin by Raymond Buckland, a work of fiction, although Buckland is better known for writing books on witchcraft and the occult. But to get us started and to give you a little context for what we're going to talk about, I'm going to read a little bit about Raymond Buckland and then a little bit about the book. From Wikipedia, Raymond Buckland, born August 31st, 1934. His craft name was Robat, was an English writer on the subject of Wicca and the occult, and a significant figure in the history of Wicca, of which he was a high priest in both the Gardnerian and Sea-Axe Wicca traditions. According to his written works, primarily Witchcraft from the Inside, published in 1971, he was the first person in the United States to openly admit to being a practitioner of Wicca, and he introduced the lineage of Gardnerian Wicca to the United States in 1964, after having been initiated by Gerald Gardner's then high priestess, Monique Wilson, in Britain the previous year. He later formed his own tradition dubbed Sea-Axe Wicca, which focuses on the symbolism of Anglo-Saxon paganism. And from Llewellyn, the publisher that Buckland published most with during his life, he was the author of more than 60 books, including such best-selling titles as Buckland's Complete Book of Witchcraft, Practical Candle Burning Rituals, and Witchcraft from the Inside. Ray lectured and presented workshops across the United States and appeared on major television and radio shows nationally and internationally. He also wrote screenplays, was a technical advisor for films, and appeared in films and videos. Beyond writing, Ray's other passion was home-built airplanes. Ray came from an English Romany family and resided with his wife Tara on a small farm in central Ohio. His legacy is preserved through the work of the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft and Magic. In addition to writing all those books on witchcraft, Wicca, and the occult, Buckland turned his hand to writing fiction, including a 2-book series on a team of occult practitioners fighting evil on behalf of the United States. This is the blurb from the first book. The Cold War is back, and the suspense thriller where international aggressors use psychokinesis, astral projection, and other psychic means to circumvent the U.S. intelligence network. When 2 routine satellite launches are inexplicably aborted, the committee, made up of a writer, a psychic housewife, and 2 parapsychologists, is called in. They piece together a sinister occult plot against the United States and embark on a supernatural adventure of a lifetime. But we are actually talking about the second book in the series, and this is from the back cover. Magical secrets found in an ancient grimoire hidden in the Vatican Library. An insanely vengeful and ambitious cardinal. Raging magical storms that take America hostage. Sounds like another case for the committee. Fierce hurricanes, ruinous tornadoes, and flooding rains are sweeping the United States, costing thousands of lives and billions of dollars. As it becomes clear that these eerily violent and frequent storms are unnatural, the committee, a covert group of psychics formed by the U.S. government to neutralize malignant paranormal forces, joins minds to determine how and why these devastating magical catastrophes are plaguing America and who's behind them. Meet Patrizio Ganganelli, a crazed Roman cardinal obsessed with avenging his mother's rape by American soldiers during World War II. As the cardinal plunders the Vatican's secret magic library to evoke demonic forces against the United States, the committee joins forces with a Wiccan priestess to counter the cardinal's attack. But even the power of the great goddess may not be enough to defeat the ancient evil that's been set loose. As the committee gathers every ounce of their psychic talent and courage, they realize that this is the most important fight of their lives and that the outcome will influence the fate of the world itself. And with me to talk about this book today is Thumper Forge, who is a mischief-making mystic with a penchant for paradigm shifting and reality blending, a Gardnerian high priest, Minoan Brotherhood initiate, and discording episcopos. He's been stirring the cauldron of chaos for over 2 decades. He lives in Houston, where he manages a leather and fetish wear shop, offers geomantic and lithomantic readings, and blogs irreverently. Thumper, welcome back to WitchLit.
Thank you. I'm very, very happy to be back.
Yeah, it's so good to have you on. And I'm very excited to talk about this book with you. And your new book. So for folks who haven't read the book, I read a little bit about it at the top, but do you want to kind of get like why you chose this book? Like why this book?
When I was asked to come up with a book, it was just the very first one that popped into my head, and I rolled with it. I had not read it in close to 20 years. Mm-hmm. My copy it was shortly after I was initiated into the Gardnerian tradition. I was meeting some people for lunch, and one of them said, I was just at Half Price Books, and I found this Raymond Buckland book, so I got it for you. And I thought, oh, and just sat down and read it and was like, wow, this is, as we were talking before we're recording, we're like, This is Dan Brown-esque.
Yes.
And I just, at the time, I found it kind of campy and fun. Mm-hmm. And I am relieved to say that in rereading it 20 years later, it was still pretty campy and fun. There were more things in it this time around that I was like, oh, that's not okay. But for the most part, I was like, it is still sort of a silly, fun read.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it was funny because the first thing that came to mind, oh, this is kind of Dan Brown-esque, but it predates Dan Brown by a few years.
It does. But it still has the conspiracy within the Catholic Church that became a mainstay of action adventure. And so Buckland was ahead of his time that way.
Yeah, he was totally ahead of his time. I do think it's interesting, like, so there are a few things, and maybe let's just get this out of the way. Like, if you, dear listener, if you're going to read this book, just be warned. This is very self-insert, I feel. Very self-insert kind of book. And the women are not full characters.
They are not. Of the 3 women, there's Beth, who is the psychic. She has ESP. And there is Tanya, who's introduced towards the end, who's the Wiccan high priestess. Mm-hmm. And there is Guillemette, who is the Mambo, the voodoo priestess. And of the 3, like, I think Guillemette ends up having a little more of a 3-dimensional role than the other 2. Mm-hmm. And she's really shown whenever the book is describing her rituals and voodoo and her participation in that, it really shows her as like this strong leader, right? Which is great. Up until then, she just sort of, like, for lack of a better way of saying it, she just sort of pops in every once in a while and goes, and I'm black, and disappears for a while.
Yeah.
And then has this great moment, these wonderful moments towards the end.
Yeah.
What kills me is that in terms of the one-dimensional quality and also sort of how so many characters in the book are stereotypical in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
They at one point all the characters have gone to Rome. They have figured out who the enemy is, and how they figured that out made me laugh out loud. But they figured it out, and they're like, okay, we've got a day to prepare. And Beth and Tanya are like, we're going shopping.
Yeah.
And the guys are like, oh, you women and your shopping. And they're like, we're certainly not going to get kidnapped by a satanic cult while we're shopping in Rome, where we're here to fight the bad guys who know
target people across the ocean and already knew they were coming, like, no, it'll be fine.
And so it was just like, why? So like, there were moments like that.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, the stereotyping goes deeper than the women. I mean, our French Etienne, our Frenchman who joins the committee, wears a beret all the time. And no person
and he's
who
got a actually thin mustache that
lives in Paris wears a beret.
And there's the newspaper editor who is, like, part of it is like Raymond Buckland himself was of Scottish and Romani heritage.
Mm-hmm.
And so he made the newspaper editor. There's like a tabloid newspaper that plays into the plot. And the editor is Scottish. And he never really says he's Scottish. He just writes in like Scottish dialect or Scottish with a Scottish accent.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing when he introduces a Romani character who, like, I will say he is very like inclusive in terms of like whatever occult or metaphysical practice you could think of, somebody pops up at some point and was like, oh, I do that.
Yeah. And even the Satanists, who are the bads, there is even a discussion of like, oh, well, there are Satanists and then there are Satanists with a capital S, like.
Yeah, do make that clear. But all of them are, every character who is of like some, European ethnicity or coming from any other culture is like, they switch back and forth between English and their native language. And, he's very clear to write the accent in. Yes.
Yeah. Which gets a little, I mean, I think now an editor to be like, yeah, you got to rein that back a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially Rudolph, our German character. Like, the man is like one English word for every 3 German words at some point.
Are we allowed to give spoilers, by the way, of the book?
Okay. This book is written in 1996. If people haven't read it, I mean, I think we're going to have to do spoilers, but we will alert spoilers now. If you want to go read it before you listen to the rest of the discussion, stop now. But we're going to spoil.
Because it has to do with Rudolph, the German guy. So Rudolph is the ceremonial magician, who is very, very good at what he does, and he's very knowledgeable. And Buckland did create a very likable character in Rudolph.
Yeah, he may be one of my favorite characters. Yeah,
I think I liked him. Earl was randomly my favorite character because Earl just went along. Like, Earl
is kind of a chaos person. Not in chaos magic way, but in like just as a human, he's kind of chaotic.
But he is very adaptable. Like, he just goes along with whatever they throw him into all these situations, and Earl's always the one who's like, okay, let's just roll with it. But the whole idea is that these horrible natural disasters have been hitting the U.S. and just causing all this property damage and loss of life, and and the committee, these occultists who are gathered together by the government to work on the issue, realize that it's happening every 6 weeks, and they realize it's going along the wheel of the year. And they're doing all this divination and these astral projections to try to figure out who might be behind it. And they have it sort of narrowed down to Rome. And, but they want to make sure they investigate everybody in the U.S. And they're like, who in Rome? And, Rudolph mentions that, the Catholic Church has all this esoteric knowledge. And they're like, oh, wow, do you think? And Rudolph's like, I don't know, like, who could be doing it today? And then they're in the airport. At one point, they're in an airport, and they see this Italian cardinal. And Rudolph goes, oh, wait, that's my arch nemesis, who is this black magician and is the head of the Brotherhood of Belial. And he just starts rattling off all these facts and figures. I was like, clearly it's him. And I was like, Rudolph, like you just now thought of this.
Yeah.
Your art nemesis
Is in Rome,
Rudolph.
is a cardinal in the Vatican. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like I felt like in writing it, Buckland got to a point where he realized something had to happen, and so he's just like Rudolph. Like Rudolph remembers is if the chapters had titles, that would be Rudolph remembers.
Yes.
That part, that and the we're here to fight the satanic cult. Let's go shopping were the two moments where I was like, I don't know that I can suspend disbelief.
Yeah. That we're afraid that we might die in this battle with evil, but we're going to go check out a bookstore and some bags. It's like, yeah, no.
And then get kidnapped.
Yeah. I mean, so there was a little bit of that. And I mean, I had to stop a couple times and just go, okay, this is genre. This is the genre. And part of this is the genre. And part of this was like you said, something has to happen in this chapter. Let's do this. But yeah, sending the women out to shop was like, oh, that was a little too on the nose. And then they got so easily hoodwinked into getting into a car.
Yeah. Like it didn't occur to them that they were being kidnapped until after they were kidnapped.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, these are supposed to be intelligent women.
Yeah. But I think Beth's main character trait, aside from having ESP, was she's like the least knowledgeable of the committee. Out of all of them, she's the one who has like the least occult knowledge.
Right.
And of course, there's like this kind of weird, unrequited love relationship between Duncan, who's kind of the main guy, and Beth. And it was some just for the listeners who may or may not ever read the book, I will say, so there's Duncan, who is a professor, correct? No, he's an author. He's an occult author.
He's an author, yeah. I mean, that's why I said, this is kind of a self-insert.
Yes. And then Earl is a professor, and Rudolph is also a professor, but he's from Germany and he's a ceremonial magician. Beth is she's from like Iowa or Idaho or a square state, and has ESP. And then Guillemette is the voodoo practitioner, and they together, the five of them, form the committee, who are later joined by Etienne, who's the French medium, and Tanya, who is the Wiccan high priestess.
Yeah.
But yeah, Duncan and Beth are kind of in a relationship, but it's like they're into each other, but it's not really defined. But the whole time, like Beth's main character trait, other than desire to shop, is like, oh no, what do we do? I better ask Duncan.
Yeah, and she's kind of his foil through the whole thing. She's she's like, oh, and I unfortunately in my head I was like, oh, she's got a breathy voice. You can tell by the way he writes her a little bit.
Oh, she does.
Yeah,
you were so right.
And I was like, oh, Ray. But she does kind of like, she occasionally will insert like this is my idea, let's do it. But most of the time she's just a foil for Duncan to expound on his brilliance. And I was like,
there's one. Yeah. And there's one moment where I can't remember which library they were in. I think at the John D. Center or something. They'd gone to do some research.
Oh, they went to the Edgar Cayce. They went to the Edgar Cayce Museum. Yeah.
Yeah. And Duncan is, of course, doing research, and Beth decides to like rest her eyes for a second, and is immediately possessed by Duncan's Romani friend, who just thought he would check in. And so it's sort of like that's Beth's job, is to be a mouthpiece for the men. Like, I am here so that the men can communicate.
Yeah. I didn't love that about her character. But I mean, the other thing I think is kind of interesting, another problem I had suspending my disbelief, is one that a German and French person would really care that much to save the United States. I mean, granted, this is 1996, so times are different.
Yeah.
But I was like, why are they on a committee organized by an American senator? Like, that's a little weird. And then, again, spoiler, at the end, would the people of Haiti give two shits about saving the United States? I don't think so.
Yeah. Like, that was, I think Buckland was like, the research he did on this novel was extensive, right?
Yeah.
Like, he really, and I was concerned I don't know if concerned is the right word because I don't want to be like too emotionally invested in the novel.
Yeah.
But because Guillemette had not been fleshed out for a good, first 2/3 of the book,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, he's going to go out there doing these big explanations of ceremonial magic and Romani divination. And Guillemette's going to like run to Haiti real quick and then run back and be like, the voodoo people are helping and they're not going to get into it.
Yeah.
But he covered that as well. And I thought he did a really good job of in his descriptions of practices outside of his own.
Mm-hmm.
But randomly didn't seem to have that much of a grasp on how the American government works.
Yeah, I mean, that was a little weird. And I mean, I also, again, like the Native American aspect, he doesn't talk about Native American ceremony that much. There is some, but it's real clear, even in the description, like parts of it are secret and you can't see that.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that. But again, are Indigenous people of the Americas of Turtle Island going to give a shit about the U.S. government? I mean, they would care about the destruction, but I don't think they would care about the government going bankrupt. I don't think they would care.
Yeah. Well, there was a little bit of like the noble savage trope leaking into that because everyone else was like, oh, they're going to destroy the country. We have to fight the anti-Americans. And the Indigenous guy was like, oh, we've noticed deer migrations. There was
volcanoes are topping off, but really it's the deer in the wrong place. Yeah.
And so I just felt like that was sort of this they're going to care, the Indigenous people are going to care about the land itself and the animals themselves, and so that's sort of their concern, where everybody else is worried about the government. But again, it was sort of that one-dimensional thing of and of course, everybody, as you mentioned, everyone, regardless of culture, is like, well, we have to save America.
Yeah, I'm like, this book would be very different if it was written now.
Yeah, it would.
Although I will say there was something, I mean, I don't know, like I obviously have no direct line to Mr. Buckland, but I was like, oh, it's really interesting to me that it was kind of based on natural disasters. Because it was like, oh, that's what we're living in, kind of. I mean, not to the extent in the book, but I was like, oh, this is like now.
Yeah, it really is. Like that part is a little timely. And early this morning, I was listening to NPR, and they were talking to a meteorologist, and he was going through the different storms that have hit my area over the past, decade or so. And he was saying, well, so this is a modern hurricane, and here's what a modern hurricane does. And because storms have changed, right, and because of climate change and global warming, storms act differently, and they are more destructive because they are evolving in their own way. And so in reading about like these horrible natural disasters kind of springing up out of nowhere and being far more destructive than anyone can imagine or prepare for, that did really hit home.
Yeah, I mean, especially like Helene was a year ago, like a little over a year ago. And then I was thinking about the hurricane that just hit Jamaica. And, I was like, yeah, this is kind of now. And like literally a volcano that hasn't erupted for 12,000 years just erupted in Ethiopia. And I was like, okay, it's not limited to the United States, this destruction.
It is absolutely not. But at the same time, like if a German ceremonial magician and a French medium and a voodoo priestess from Haiti were to watch that now, they'd be like, well, that's a shame.
Yeah.
like you're saying earlier, they'd be like, let's let it clean house. Let's let it clean house.
Let's see what happens. Okay. So I do have a question about this. I am not a ceremonial magician. I just read about it. So I did kind of get the impression that there was some Wiccan elements thrown into that ceremonial high magic, though. Yeah,
there were. It kind of, because like when we think of like where the roots of Wicca, of what we now call Wicca, there was a lot of influence of folklore, but there was also elements of ceremonial magic,
right?
With and all the different practices of witchcraft that sort of grew out of England in the from the late 1800s through the 1950s, had this folklore element and a ceremonial element. So we are going to see some crossover in the rituals, but there was also the way that the ceremonial magic itself, at least as the way that Rudolph was presenting it, was very Wiccan, or was very pagan at least, and very pagan at the time of like the divine masculine and the divine feminine, which would not have really been present in ceremonial magic.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was like, because I know the history from Golden Dawn and all that, and I was like, but this seems like a backward influence to me, the way it was kind of presented. But I mean, Buckland, I mean, I know he dabbled in a lot. I know he did a lot of stuff. And I have not read Jason Menke's biography of him yet. It's been on my pile, and I just have had so much other stuff to read. I haven't gotten to it. But I mean, did he also, I know there's Buckland, some goetic stuff.
As far as not really. Like he, I actually did a TikTok video about this because in his earlier books on witchcraft, one thing that he warned against was when casting a circle, using the phrase "Guardians of the Watchtowers," because he was like, that phrase comes from Enochian magic and it is prevalent in ceremonial magic, and you don't want to mess with that. Like, he really was warning people away from the practice of ceremonial magic. In 1996, the movie The Craft came out, which drove the phrase "Guardians of the Watchtowers" into every pagan's mind.
Right.
And you can actually look at Buckland's books from the Complete Book of Witchcraft to, I think, Wicca for One came out next, and then Wicca for Life came out after that. And you can kind of see him soften on that particular phrase.
Interesting.
Where he does start including it in his own rituals because it was kind of part of the zeitgeist at that point.
Yeah.
Buckland, he may have known, had some good knowledge about ceremonial magic, but he was not a practitioner of it, and he was not a big fan of it.
Okay.
So my theory is that he reworked the ceremonial magic in the book to be something that was palatable to him. Because there were no Christian elements in it.
Yeah, there's no Christian elements in it. And I mean, having the Catholic Church be the big bad, but even in that, like, I was like, oh yeah. I mean, like I said, it predates Dan Brown, but I think it did come out after the Holy Blood, Holy Cross, that Dan Brown's book is, I think it's between those two, basically.
Yeah.
Like it's clear when he's talking about this conspiracy of people inside the church, the black nuns, all this kind of stuff, that the larger church is not aware.
Right.
So, I mean, it's still kind of, it doesn't like completely condemn the Catholic Church across the board, but it kind of is like, well, they're not keeping their house clean, because he does mention like the other problem the Catholic Church has with abuse. So like that is mentioned. And so he's kind of like, there is some critique of like, they're not keeping their house clean. And this is like a bigger problem in it. But I don't know. It's just fascinating to me.
It was interesting. And I think, he did, and it said something in the, I want to say the credits, and that's not the right word, the acknowledgements. He thanked somebody who helped him figure out a lot of the astrology stuff, because, Etienne, who is a medium, but also towards the end, he's like, oh, by the way, I'm a complete authority on astrology, but not planetary astrology, this other kind of astrology. And apparently Buckland had somebody worked with somebody to get that into the book. So, a lot of the stuff, a lot of the magic presented, especially from different cultures, was not his knowledge base, right? He had gone to other people to get this information and to make sure that it was presented believably. And I think with the ceremonial stuff, I think he wanted it to be very, what's the word I'm looking for? At the time the book came out, within paganism, there was a big thing of like no devil in the craft. And that, we'd just come out of the Satanic Panic, and there was a big effort to distance modern paganism from anything Abrahamic. And so the ceremonial magic he presented very much had a pagan flavor and one that would be palatable to a pagan audience.
Yeah.
While keeping the devil worship in a very much a Christian paradigm.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because even when Guillemette is in Haiti and they encounter her mother's old practicing partner, she's like, oh, he's not a Satanist. He's a Boko. He's not what you think of as a Satanist. He's just like a left-hand path voodoo practitioner. And I was like, okay, yeah. I mean, but again, they also kind of erased the Christian elements of voodoo as well. Like he doesn't really talk about that aspect of it.
Oh yeah, that was something that jumped out at me where when they're talking about the different spirits they're going to be invoking, and Guillemette is like, well, we're going to invoke Ogun, who's the god of war, and we're going to invoke Damballa, who is the father god. But that's not really the language of African traditional religion, right? You talk about the Loa and the spirits, and if you're moving into Lukumi, you talk about, the Orisha. There are specific words that don't parallel the term God,
right?
And but this was also written at a time when within general pagandom there was sort of this like leftover theosophical, all gods are one god, it's all kind of the same thing.
The plug and play.
And so
I either call it plug and play, god use, or hot swapping gods.
Yes, exactly. There was that was very prevalent at the time. So Buckland was writing to that audience as well, where he was finding like I'm using this term wildly incorrectly and I'm going to get canceled, but the intersectionality of indigenous practices and voodoo and ceremonial magic and Wicca, and see how they all sort of blend, how they can all work together when they are very, very different in actual practice.
Yeah. Yes. Universality is not the, like you said, it's not the theosophical reality that people want it to be sometimes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I do think, actual universalists probably still have that idea that there is like, what is it? Many, one light through many windows. That, that idea. But, and, but
there's also, because I actually recently joined a Unitarian Universalist church. Like it started out on a whim and it's turning into a cool thing, and I'm on a committee there. It's great. But,
they've got you. You're on a committee. You're in.
yeah. My first committee meeting is the 14th. The minister warned me. He's like, they're going to try to get you to join committees. You don't have to do it at first. And I immediately joined one. But I've been learning a lot about just the history of the denomination. And on the Universalist side, there was that idea of, light coming through many windows. But at the same time, we're sticking to our window. Like we're acknowledging all the windows, but we're still doing it.
We're still doing this our way. Yeah, we're going to do it our way. Yeah.
Versus the universalism presented in Buckland's book, where like everybody kind of taps into the same thing and everything kind of overlays. And the Indigenous guy starts talking about the wheel of the year, and Guillemette is all up on her paganism.
Yeah, I was like,
it was a little blendy.
I mean, it is a really nice idea that we could, have that kind of ecumenical understanding. Yeah. I mean, I like that idea of it, that, everybody can just get along. I mean, that's great. I love that idea.
And it was very, it's reflective of what was going on in the greater pagan community at the time, where there was sort of this idea of this ecumenical idea and this idea of this approach to universalism. The downside being that, people from marginalized cultures were like, okay, but you can't just take our stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And the pagans were like, oh, but it's all the same thing. And the marginalized people were like, in fact, it's not. Please give that back.
This is a great opportunity to talk about how you talk about that same subject in your book. So in addition to me reading this book, I also got to read Thumper's new book, The Chaos Apple. And you talk about this specifically, the difference between appropriation and appreciation in the book.
Yes. I will try not to go on a rant because
we love rants. Like it's fine.
Because I just, coming out of a initiatory Wiccan background, there is a current trendy idea that Wicca is cultural appropriation, and the people saying that don't really know what Wicca is, and they don't really know what cultural appropriation is. They've just put the two words together to see what happens.
Further Wiccan bashing, I might add. I think it just is like throwing on that pile of whatever. So
exactly. But so cultural appropriation itself is it occurs when a dominant culture adopts the practices or traditions or even the fashions of a marginalized group, and then either denies the marginalized group access to those practices. It's important to say that these are all usually taken out of context, where like ceremonial jewelry becomes a fashion statement, or along those lines.
You wear your
or music gets repurposed.
Feather headdress to Coachella.
Yes, that is like the kind of the iconic moment of cultural appropriation of wearing something that would have been extremely important to an indigenous culture and using it in a fashion shoot featuring all skinny white girls. But anyway, so the dominant group, adopts something from the marginalized group taken out of context, and then either denies the marginalized group access to that artifact, or condemns the marginalized group for continuing to engage in the practice or artifact, or pretends that the practice did not originate with the marginalized group. We see this today, especially on social media, because I am far too old to be on TikTok, but I'm in there like fighting the good fight. And on the witch talk side of things, there is a big interest in what people are calling baneful magic. And they want to say baneful because you can't call it black magic because that has racist connotations. But the vast majority of practices that are getting lumped under the header of baneful magic come directly from African American folk magic. And they were co-opted in the mid 2000s when hoodoo got really trendy and nobody wrote down where they found everything. So people are like, I practice baneful magic, and it's my, death unto my enemy's candle and my hot foot powder and my sour jar. And it's all, hoodoo, but everybody thinks it's traditional witchcraft.
Yeah.
And so they have, taken the practices out of its context, and rewritten the history of it to profit off of it.
I think the profiting off of it is also like a key part in that piece too. Yeah.
Yeah. And profit doesn't necessarily mean just like, the exchange of money. It is, especially on the social media side of things, it is profiting when we get more views and engagements. And, I'm going to talk about baneful magic and describe it in all these different ways and show all these different ways I practice baneful magic. And I'm not going to mention where I got any of it from. And I'm going to make sure nobody has access to a valid history of any of this. And look at my account grow. That's still profit. And you're profiting off of somebody else's labor.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I have kind of disengaged from a lot of social media, including TikTok, just for my sanity. And, but one of the things that, and one of the things also that it was not key factor in me leaving, but one of the things that concerned me before I left was this trend on TikTok, which has been a little while now, and I don't know if it's continued, about don't read books. All these authors are bad people and they didn't know what they were talking about, and they're sexist and misogynist and racist and don't read books. And I'm like, okay, can we simmer down a second here and think critically?
I'm pleased to say that trend does seem to have died out.
I'm so glad, because that was terrifying.
Yeah. That there were several things. There was a whole thing about don't read books. And at one point there was you don't have to read books. You can cast a spell to absorb the information from the books.
I mean, if that worked, most of us would have figured that out in college. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah. But there was a whole thing. And it was one of those things where, like, there's always interesting. It's always interesting to me how pop culture and the occult influence each other. And so when I saw a video of somebody, like, it involved, like, you get a copper bowl and you fill it with water and you set it on top of the books, and the copper absorbs all the information. It leaches into the water. And then the next morning you drink the water and you now know everything in the books. And I was like, that is eerily similar to me to Dark Willow from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. where she put her hands on the big pile of occult text, and on like the text, the words were like running up her arms. It's the similar idea, right?
Yeah.
It's but it's I if that would work, I would hit deadlines more often.
Yeah. And hopefully, they don't do that too often, lest they get copper poisoning.
If anybody shows up, what color does copper turn you green?
I can't. I can't remember. I know it's bad for you.
Yeah,
I have
silver. Too much
managed to
silver
avoid
turns you
it.
blue.
Yeah. But yeah, copper poisoning is a real thing, people.
Absolutely, and that's one thing that I think there is such, especially on social media, there is such an emphasis on the aesthetic of witchcraft over the functionality of witchcraft.
Yeah.
So it's people don't take the time to think in terms of like, copper or lead poisoning, or should you really be inhaling all those fumes?
Don't put those rocks in your water.
Yeah, don't put the rocks in the water. Don't put the rocks anywhere the rocks wouldn't naturally go.
Yeah, no. Rocks are porous. Yeah. Yeah.
But to get back to what you had asked, the cultural appropriation is, I'm glad that people are, even if it's dimly aware, it's good that people are aware of it.
Yeah.
It's just, there is nuance to it. And there is, it's not just a clear cut and dry black and white distinction.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing when people get into the idea of like open close practices. And I think I said this in the book where, people will say white sage is a closed practice. No, white sage is a plant. And the use of the ritual use of white sage within indigenous religious ceremonies is a closed practice. But there is wiggle room, and there are many other sages out there. And just if somebody is talking about using sage, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're saying white sage, and it's okay to use other sages. And there's a whole host of reasons why we would want to avoid the use of white sage within modern European-based witchcraft. And it's not just white sage is close practice.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like there's a whole lot more to the story. And I'm glad people are aware, but there's still much more work to be accomplished and much more education to be had around it.
Yeah, I think that, and like, I think you talk about this in the book, tarot being a closed practice. And I'm like, no, and you said tarot is a game that was, it's based on cards based on an Italian playing card game. But reading tarot in the way that Romani cultures read tarot to do fortune telling to basically survive, that is a closed practice.
Yeah, there's a specific method. And this is something that I witnessed on a Facebook group a couple of years back, and it just made me apoplectic, where there was this whole idea that tarot was a closed practice. And people were like boycotting their local occult shops for carrying tarot cards. It was like people took it really seriously. The history of tarot is that in, I want to say like the late 1700s, these European occultists took this Italian card game and started using it for divination and meditational purposes. And they ascribed meanings to the cards from this card game. It would be very similar if somebody picked up an Uno deck and said, I'm going to use this to foretell the future. And when it caught on and it kind of started spreading as a practice, these European upper class gentlemen decided, well, we can't just say we made this up. Right. And so they started saying, oh, this came from ancient Egypt. Yes. And it came to us through the Romani people who they were calling them something else other than Romani.
Right.
And they created this whole backstory to tarot that did not exist. And so the kids a couple of years ago who got really upset about tarot and were saying it was closed practice and it was a closed Romani practice were unwittingly promoting the racist trope that tarot cards originated with the Roma.
Right.
And they were, what drove me up the wall was somebody jumping into a Facebook group and saying, hi, I'm actually Romani. And no, tarot did not originate within my culture. And there are specific ways of reading tarot that are unique to the Romani, but literally anyone can read tarot cards because we didn't invent it. And he got shouted down by all these white girls saying, we are protecting your culture.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you almost had it. You almost had
You're so
it.
close. You're so close. Yeah. I mean, I think that is something I find interesting is that sometimes the loudest calls about, oh my God, this is cultural appropriation come from people who look like us. They're not.
Yeah.
It's not. Again, there's a lack of critical thinking, and when you are actually told by a person from that culture, not that any culture is a monolith and one person's opinion is not everyone's opinion. But when you're given facts, you're like, but no, like, yeah.
And we just, as members of dominant groups, even those of us within paganism who have some kind of marginality, we are still part of dominant groups in other ways.
Right. Exactly.
Like I can be all queer and non-binary, but I still present as a white dude. So I have some privilege there, and I'm still part of a dominant group. But we are not used to not being centered, and we are not used to receiving information from anyone who doesn't look like us.
Yeah.
So when it comes to things like cultural appropriation, we tend not to look towards the marginalized communities themselves. We look to other white people to tell us what to do.
Right.
And it just kind of perpetuates things instead of actually solving the problems.
Yeah. Which, I mean, to kind of leap us back to the book, I mean, I think that is one thing kind of interpret. Like, clearly Buckland did his research.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, based on his descriptions of things, I think he probably did quite a bit of research and really understood, tried to present things in a fair light. I mean, the book is still, 30 years old. So it's still going to be, there's still things. I mean, he does use what now people would refer to as the G slur, but also at the time that wasn't as prevalently known. And Buckland himself identified as Romani. So like, I don't, like that's a complicated piece there. But for folks who read the book, you will encounter that word multiple times.
Yeah.
So
it's very like when Buckland uses it, it's very to me like I can call my mom a trollop. You can't call my mom a trollop.
Right.
I can say this thing. You can't say this thing.
And that's like, I'm not going to call him out on that because I'm like, not my lane. It's not my lane.
Exactly. That is. But yeah, that was. I will say, as centered as kind of whiteness is in the novel on both sides of the big battle.
Yeah.
It was kind of voodoo that saved the day, right?
Yeah.
Like it was the Loa who showed up to really duke it out with the Satanists. And that didn't have to happen. Guillemette could have at the time the novel was written, Guillemette could have just been like on the sidelines cheering on the white people and nobody would have batted an eye. And then you and I would have read this book today and been like, oh my God, this is hideous.
Yeah.
But, the other cultures represented contributed equally and got credit for it.
Yeah. No, I did appreciate that aspect of it. And I mean, it is a campy, fun read if you, can suspend your disbelief for a few things.
Yeah.
Which the
dialogue is rough at times.
The dialogue is very stilted sometimes. It's a little stilted. Yeah.
And it's like it would have done Buckland a world of good to like get some friends together and actually read the manuscript out loud. To like, oh wait, this doesn't sound like dialogue.
Which I kind of surprised because honestly, it reads like a screenplay treatment a little bit.
It does. I wonder if that was in the back of his head. I was surprised
that the dialogue was as stilted as it was because I was like, and I know he also worked some like in film. Yeah. So I was like, the dialogue was more stilted, especially that the characters have that thing where they call each other by name all the time.
Yes.
And I think part of that is because there are a lot of people and it's like trying to keep things straight to some extent. But also it was like, it just felt forced a lot. So, and there's a lot of info dumping. There's a lot of info dumping in the conversations.
And that actually contributes to the idea of like the film treatment aspect of it, because really getting into like set design, really getting very descriptive in terms of not only the locations, but like street names and directions and where things are physically located in relation to one another, which probably did come from the film background. I think a lot of the dialogue also was like the dialogue to me felt old. I was kind of surprised when I looked and saw that the book came out in the mid 90s because the dialogue reminded me of books from like the 70s and 80s. You know, and I feel like Buckland was maybe using a tone that in his mind sounded modern and fresh and hip when it was actually about a decade too late.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I hadn't thought about that. But yeah, you have a point. I mean, given Buckland's age, that probably like that was when he was young and cool and hip too.
Yeah.
In that period. So
but there was also like Guillemette calls everybody my man.
Yeah.
Mainly Earl, because you know there's that weird like are Earl and Guillemette
will they won't they kind of thing going on with them.
Yeah. But she calls everyone my man. And then when they go to Haiti at one point, everyone in Haiti is also calling everyone my man. And I was like, Ray, do you think these people are all speaking jive? Like, this is a little dated, my friend.
Yeah, especially her friend in New York, that her accent is very predominant in the text in a way that I was like, maybe not.
Yeah, I'm not entirely comfortable with this, Ray.
Yeah,
back it off just a little bit.
And I mean, I think that, thankfully, I think that's something in fiction that a lot of people have moved away from is writing an accent. I mean, sometimes it works.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't. So I think that, like, I think a few German words thrown in or a few French words thrown in or a few Scottish, like that would have worked, but it's relentless in the text.
It is relentless.
So I think that is kind of why it comes across dated in that way.
There's something that happens in literature that wants to have an educational element to it, where there is a lot of, especially when it comes to different languages, stating a word or phrase in the character's native language and then repeating it in English.
Yeah.
I do think that either Buckland wanted this book to have an educational element to it, or the publisher, because Llewellyn has had a fiction like subdivision in the past. And I want to say it was called Midnight Sun, maybe. That sounds right to me.
Yeah, I mean, this book was published by Llewellyn.
It was, but it also wasn't put out by their fiction imprint. It came directly from Llewellyn.
Yeah. I was surprised by that it wasn't from.
Yeah. I think maybe they wanted the book to have some sort of redeemable educational element to it. Like, yes, it's fiction and yes, it's a conspiracy, but, we want the reader to come away with basic working knowledge of German.
It's like, maybe that would be difficult. But I mean, the thing I thought was interesting in the German, like a lot of things he says in German are actually a lot of cognate words in English. Like they're not that.
Yeah.
The French is a little more difficult to parse unless you know a little bit of French. But he does repeat himself.
I did skip over a lot of the Latin when the Satanists were really like going to town with the rituals. I was like, I'm just going to skip ahead.
Yeah. So one thing in his educational thing that I thought was really interesting, because I've always kind of been like, English is a perfectly good language to do magic in. But when he talks about them writing, when they're making the protective talismans and he has them write their names in Theban.
Yeah.
And he was like, it's not any alphabet would do other than the one you're familiar with, because it's causing you to focus on the word and on the act of it. And I was like, okay, that is an acceptable reason. Not that Latin is the only language that demons and angels will speak. So.
No, that's a really good point. And I think that, and from the educational side of things, I think that he really wanted to, explain this is how ceremonial magic works. This is how witchcraft works. This is how voodoo works. This, that he wanted his readers to come away with knowledge about these different traditions and practices. But that's also where, for me, the suspend disbelief got a little treacherous, because Um, so like Rudolph has like led them through all these ceremonial initiations, and they've done all this work, and they've done things like with the writing their, in Theban on the parchment, and the ink had to be made a very certain way. And Rudolph is like inspecting their work and making sure everything is perfect. And then at the end, when they start the ceremonial ritual to like summon basically the Wiccan gods to help the Loa defeat the demon. If I had a nickel for every time I had to say that on a podcast, they're like Duncan and Beth are like, but we don't have our robes and we don't have this. And Rudolph is like, we're just going to have to try to make it work. And Duncan was like, well, witchcraft is very simplified and does not take a lot of fancy tools. And Rudolph was like, you're right. We'll just practice witchcraft. And I was like, couldn't you have been doing that from the beginning then? Like, did Rudolph even need to fly in? Like, did you need Tanya, whose job was to get kidnapped? Like, all this, it was moments like that where it was like, oh yeah, we realized just now, like, you have been talking about pagan witchcraft this entire novel, and at the end you go, oh wait, that'll work too. We'll just do that instead.
Yeah, I mean, that was amusing, I think, especially the ashtray from the gift shop as their bowl of water. I mean,
that cracks me up.
Yeah, no, it was
like we have all had the ashtray from the gift shop on our altar at one point.
Yeah, so I was like, okay. But I do think, and we talked about this a little before, because I wanted to also talk more about your book and kind of in context of this, because I would say, oh, how did this influence your work? I don't know. I mean, maybe it did influence your work, but I think the more interesting thing is how we can kind of backform this a little bit and talk about how the committee is formed and how that might relate to chaos witchcraft.
It does relate, and it was something that, as far as I know, the cardinal sin did not influence the writing of the Chaos Apple, because it's been a long time since I've read it. But one thing that does pop up, specifically within Discordianism, which is a big aspect of the book I wrote, it's chaos magic and chaos witchcraft, but very much in a Discordian framework. Discordianism being the modern worship of Eris, the Greek goddess of discord. And within Discordianism, there are 5 figures known as the Apostles of Eris, who are personifications, and they represent major world religions. And so there is Hongmeng, who represents Taoism, and Sri Siddhasti, who represents Hinduism and Jainism, and Dr. Van Mojo, who represents the African traditional religions, and Malaclips the Elder, who represents Abrahamic religions, and Zarathud, who represents ceremonial magic. And we do kind of see something very similar with the committee, in that the members of the committee represent specific areas of the occult or paganism in general, where you have Rudolph, who is the ceremonial magician, and you have Duncan, who is the general pagan occultist, and Guillemette, who is the African traditional religious practitioner, and Beth and Earl, who are just sort of there.
We don't really get a good sense of what Earl actually practices, do we?
I don't remember. I remember being shocked towards the end of the novel when they were trying to escape from, they were locked in a mansion in Haiti, and they were trying to escape, and they said something about Earl stroking his beard, and I was like, he has a beard?
Yeah.
Like, I just realized, like, in my face, in my mind, he just was like this kind of blank person whose job was to like swoon over Guillemette. But no, he was a professor.
Was he just our armchair occultist?
Armchair occultist. But the number 5 does pop up in Discordianism as sort of the sacred number, and everything relates to 5. So to have these 5 members of the committee, to me, that really kind of brings in that Discordian element of each of them being a personification and representing a specific field that is going to be necessary in order to overthrow the Satanists.
Well, and the thing
I'm also really good at rationalization, and chaos magic comes in really handy for that.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I like the idea, like Earl is kind of our because one thing he does do is wherever he is, that he just goes with the flow. So he starts dancing in the voodoo ritual, and the Mamba is like, "Oh, you're really good at this." Like he just kind of believes.
Yeah, like he gets compliments for his yeah. It's within chaos magic. There is this idea of paradigm shifting, which is basically using belief as a tool, switching beliefs, switching to whatever believing whatever you need to believe in order to accomplish whatever work you're doing. And Earl was very emblematic of that, where he does go with the flow, but he's not really a skeptic. He doesn't really balk at anything. Like, hey, we're gonna we have this ink that's made out of what was it? Peach pits and fireplace ashes and water from a river collected under this specific full moon. Mm-hmm. And we need you to write your name in Theban on this parchment. And Earl's like, okay.
Yeah.
And he just does it. And he gets, unleashed into a voodoo ceremony. And he's just like, and the way they describe it is like he starts tapping his feet and then he starts dancing. And then he, he just gets completely subsumed by whatever he's around and becomes really good at whatever he seems to be doing.
Right.
And that is very much a chaos magic approach to fighting a satanic cult.
So maybe Earl is our secret chaot in the committee.
Earl is the secret chaot. He absolutely. He was. I don't know if Buckland was very. Chaos magic was around at the time that Buckland was writing, but I don't know how. It was very subcultural, like a subculture within a subculture for a long time, and it really wasn't until kind of the late 2000s where it started moving back into the mainstream, mainly through comic books and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and putting the idea of chaos magic in everybody's heads.
Yeah.
So there would have been chaos practitioners at the time that Buckland wrote this book, but he probably wouldn't have been influenced by that.
Yeah.
Which itself is a very chaos thing of, looking back and going, oh, we have now identified the chaos practitioner.
Yes. It was in the ether. It was in the ether.
He was. He didn't. We are restructuring our beliefs. And just like a lot of people start reading about chaos magic and they go, well, this is the way I've always done things. Yeah. Earl just didn't know he was the chaos magician, but he was totally the chaos magician.
He was totally a chaos magician. Yeah. Before we started talking, I did tell Thumper, in reading the book, I've always kind of eschewed calling myself a chaos witch or a magician because it has taken on this kind of meaningless cultural thing of actually just being disorganized and eclectic rather than actually what chaos magic is. And the more I read the book, I was like, oh, Victoria, maybe, just maybe you're closer to this than you think you are. So yeah, I think it is, maybe it's like reading WebMD. I don't know.
A little bit. The chaos is contagious.
Yeah.
But that's also part of why I wanted to write this book, because I remember a friend of mine on TikTok talks a lot about chaos magic, and he had made a video using some mathematical formula to create shapes that he was turning into sigils. It was really cool. And some random 20-something left a comment on the video and was like, well, that doesn't seem very chaotic. And he was like, because it's not, because chaos and chaotic are two different concepts. And I think from a pop culture standpoint, we have the word chaotic moving into the common vernacular through role-playing games, because people talk about chaotic good and chaotic neutral or chaotic evil. And then through comic books and from there, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we have this concept of chaos magic from the Scarlet Witch. And so those two kind of came together and people go, oh, chaos magic. I've heard of that. And they don't realize that their understanding of what chaos magic is coming from fiction versus like the historical record of people practicing something that they called chaos magic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And fiction very much has a place in chaos, right? We can draw inspiration from fiction and we can worship fictional deities just to see what happens. But the current physical representation of chaos magic is not very accurate. But for a lot of people, it's all they have to go on. So they just assume that's what it is.
Well, and I mean, I think the idea that in chaos magic, it is legitimate practice to do something that works, even if that thing is saying, "Oh, the Scarlet Witch is now my patron deity, and everything I do is in her name." And what? But if it works and you can replicate it, it's valid. So I think people have this idea that means anything goes, and that's not the same thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a trend for a while. I don't know if people are still doing it. I talk about it in the book of blowing cinnamon through your front door on the first of the month to bring in prosperity. And somebody tagged me in a video where they were setting up their coffee maker like in the evening, so that setting the timer so they would brew coffee in the morning, and they were adding cinnamon to the grounds, and they were like, "Yeah, me just being lazy, and being a chaos witch because look how lazy I am." And I responded to the video directly because I was like, this is in fact not lazy. This is efficient and innovative.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is chaos magic. You have found a workaround. You have found an easier way to do something that's still going to get you the results you're looking for.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to be blowing the coffee steam through your door instead of flinging cinnamon around. But, there's no ancient traditional thing saying how the cinnamon has to get across the threshold. Right. You just, you have to blow it, and there has to be the scent of cinnamon, and you're doing it. And and I wasn't trying to like come down on that person, but I was trying to say, like, don't think that what you're doing is lazy just because it's easier. You're creating something that is replicable. You're creating something that works.
Yeah.
You are approaching your magic with efficiency. Like, those are all good things.
Right. And you're not going to give your cat a hot foot with cinnamon on the floor. I mean,
yes, exactly. Yeah. There are many other ways you can get the cinnamon through the door in a way that will not affect your pets adversely.
Right. Yeah. So that's like, I think in one of my, in my forthcoming book, put it that way. I do talk about like salting your house when you move in, like, before you move your stuff in. And I was like, but if you have cats or small children, you can make salt water and just asperge things. It's the same process. You're just doing it in a way that is safe for the creatures that live in your home.
Exactly.
It's, there is, like you said, yes, sometimes there are hard and fast rules. And I think of ceremonial magic as one of those that kind of has hard and fast rules. But even then, the grimoires don't agree on everything.
Exactly.
And they are also, I've heard Dr. Alexander Cummins talk about this a lot, that we have this idea because someone wrote it in a grimoire that that's the way you have to do it. But these were people who were experimenting with magic, and this is what they wrote down. This was basically their lab book.
Exactly. And people don't always realize that, like a grimoire will say, oh, you need a specific bean pod from this exotic plant that only grows in Tunisia.
Mm-hmm.
And what people don't realize is that these authors of the grimoires were also including, but if you can't find this bean pod, you can just use a regular bean.
Right.
Like, there are substitutions in the grimoires. They're like, if you can't do it this way, do it this way. Try, there was nothing set in stone.
Right. Well, and I always say,
and the authors were fully aware that.
Right. And I would say, like, in the, like, if you're doing like a traditional spell or traditional working, because grimoires have spells and ritual, there's a lot of stuff floating around out there. But if you're doing something that you look at as traditional, look at what those ingredients are supposed to do. Like, if the ingredient calls for ambergris, you're not going to be able to pick that up at the Walgreens. But it was costly. It had a perfume to it. Like, a lot of times I will use saffron in that place, which is still costly. It's a sacrifice to use it, and it has its own scent, but it's not illegal for me to possess in the United States.
Yeah.
So
And that's a really good point about, why are ingredients included? Like with ambergris, is it, is it is it being included because it smells pretty, or is it being included because it represents the sacrifice?
Right.
Like that's a very
Or
cool
is it
way
a
of looking at that.
fixative? Because sometimes it was a fixative.
Yeah. Is there what else that could we use as a fixative that would be affordable?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it are accessible. And
Right.
it's
Orris root.
yeah, those are all
Sorry.
what'd you say?
I said Orris root. Cough, cough.
There.
Yeah.
Also a very good one. But there are things that kind of everything is a substitute, right?
Right.
Like we can always figure out, there's always a workaround. There's always a way to figure something out. And I think so many people use those obscure ingredients or the more arcane or esoteric practices as excuses not to practice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really was going to cast a spell, but I don't have any lavender, and the spell says lavender. Well, throw something pretty that's something else rose in there. See what happens, or leave it out, or use a different spell. But so many people look at these things as stumbling blocks when all they really are is just like guardrails.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's
Like,
such a
it's a way to get out
tradition.
of the path, but you don't have to use them.
Yeah. And I feel like there's this, a tradition of sorts, I guess, or a trend. I don't know what you want to call it. In modern occult writing, like I think of S. Ardenay's like Fumigations of the Seven Planets, taking Agrippa's formulas for the incenses of the seven planets, which, like, if you look at the Mars one, there's some stuff in there you probably don't want to mess with, and then making it like safe for a modern practitioner to use, for one, and not, you basically have to lay out your paycheck for the next 3 months to procure this thing. So I think, thankfully that conversation is happening. I don't know how it filters down to everything else, but I feel like both in, classes I've been to and books I feel like it's there. Like, people are kind of embracing this idea that because these things were set down in writing does not mean that they are invaluable. Like, you have to look at it and go, okay, what are the other things we can do? How can we make this work for us now? How can we innovate and make it work?
Exactly. And yeah, people, especially when occult ideas move into it sounds weird to say the occult mainstream, but there's sort of like the general knowledge base, right? And when ideas move into the occult mainstream, they tend to come in static, as we don't see the things that led up to that idea developing, and we don't see what the creators of that idea did with it afterwards. We just have this one kind of cement image. And I think about that with sigils a lot, because there is this, fairly popular method of making sigils where you write out the words and you cross out the letters and you put them together into design. And that, is based on the work of Austin Osman Spare, which was fleshed out by Peter J. Carroll and Ray Sherwin in the 70s. And it's one way of making sigils. It is not the way of making sigils. But so many people today, I've seen so many TikTok videos and Witch Talk videos on this. Like, today we're going to talk about how to make a sigil. Here's how you do it. And that is one way of doing it. That has become the way of doing it. And people will argue over it. If you're familiar with Laura Tempest Zakroff, who has written a couple of really interesting books on crafting sigils, the top complaint she gets is people going, well, no, you have to use letters and numbers. You're not using letters and numbers. You're just using symbols. And she's like, what do you think letters and numbers are?
Exactly.
And so we do have to remember that these things were, anytime we get a snapshot of something, there was the before and the after, and nothing is crystallized. Everything within magic is always evolving. It's always an evolutionary process.
And the after is us, and there will be after us too. So
yeah.
No, I like that idea. So I kind of want to give the last word to Ray on this. So how would you sum up, like, what if you're going to read this book now, like, and we think if we do think Ray was being didactic with this book, what is the takeaway?
What is the takeaway? That I think on one hand, I think Ray really wanted to give his audience like a message of hope, like good will triumph over evil. I think he did so in a kind of detrimentally new agey way at times. There was a lot of light and positivity mentioned, especially towards the end. But especially in kind of the current era where it is very easy to feel helpless and hopeless. Witchcraft has always and magic have always been the resources of the oppressed. And I think we can look at this book and say, okay, but ultimately the good guys did win. Even when they thought they didn't have resources, they found some, and we can do the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what I'm choosing to take away from it.
I love that. But before we go, though, I want to give you an opportunity to kind of vlog what you got to vlog, including this new book, and what else, anything else you've got coming up.
So, of course, the new book, it came out on November 8th, so it has only been in the world for less than a month. But it is The Chaos Apple, Magic and Discordianism for the Postmodern Witch. It is literally available everywhere. But if I had my druthers, I would tell you go support an independent bookstore or find it on bookshop.org. I will be showing up in person places in the coming year. I'm going to be at Austin Witch Fest in April. I will be at Harvest Gathering in March. Or no, not March, August. I don't know why I backtracked on that one. And in the meantime, if you go to thumperforge.com, you will find all my social media and links to podcasts and information on me and where I'll be. And you can also find me pretty much on every social media platform as at Fivefold Law. I am all over the place with that.
Awesome. And I'll put links to all that in the show notes too for folks. But sometimes, especially if you're driving, don't stop and write this down. So make sure you have that. But thank you so much for coming back on the show. This was a fantastic conversation. And I don't know that I ever would have picked this book up on my own, but I'm kind of thinking I might want to go read the first one.
Yeah. Oh, we didn't even mention that. Yeah. This is a sequel. This is a sequel to The Committee.
Yeah.
And I was kind of thinking the same thing. I want to see how they met, and I want to see if there's more backstory on Earl and Guillemette. I want to see what's going on with those two.
Yeah, me too. So we'll let you know. I'll post about it if I read it. Oh, cool.
Excellent. I will do the same.
WitchLit is a production of 1000 Volt Press and is edited by Julian Rashke. Our intro music is Cosmic Glow by Andrew Kay, and our outro music is Voices by Alexander Shanekar. Transcripts and all our previous episodes are available at witchlitpod.com, and you can follow us on Instagram or Threads at witchlitpod. Please help other witches find us by leaving a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. And thank you for listening to and reading WitchLit.